from Jeepteck. Out here in the garage just doing a little bit of maintenance on the Jeep. Cleaning some intake stuff, and figured I'd shoot a quick video on my new PRP Daily Driver seats. So, just installed them probably about 2 weeks ago. I'm pretty happy with them. The installation wasn't terrible. Bolting everything down is fairly straightforward. Moving the old seats, self-explanatory for the most part. There's a few bolts down here. I don't know if you can see those. There's a bolt there. There's a bolt there. And that actually mounts onto the factory seats here. So that all connects to those mounts right there. So fairly self-explanatory. It's a little bit tricky to get to some of these bolts down here just because there's such a small landing there. So what was helpful with this install was actually using a real short ratcheting wrench. So patience is the biggest thing with that. Lots of patience. So what I did when I ordered these, I actually ended up ordering the PRP Jk Seat Mounts. That actually bolts onto the factory slide. So this slide is still retained, hanging up on the seat belt there. There we go. So that's still retained there. The one biggest challenge of doing this install was actually maintaining the factory seat belts. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what I did with that. So factory seat belt actually mounts to the side of the factory seats. So what I had to do, drill a hole right there, take that bracket and bolt it all the way through that mount right there. And then basically the same thing with the seatbelt latch right here. Let's see if you can see down there. Yeah, got a light going. So the one thing with this, I actually had to make a little extension bracket with it. I'll show you that here from the other side. The reason being is because these seats actually sit up a little bit higher. I mean, it's a bucket style seat, so it's going to be a little bit different from the factory seats just because it's got the wider bucket on it. So if you look down there, I just made a small seatbelt extension for it. Now one thing that they do sell is actually seatbelt extenders. I chose to not run those. I wanted something a little bit more sound here. I mean, that's a pretty solid fit, so that's what I ended up doing. Just took a piece of 1018 flat bar, I think it's 1 inch wide, drilled a few holes in there, and locked everything down with some lock nuts. So pretty simple there. Also, one thing that is still retained as well is the seatbelt sensor. That's this cable right there. I was able to get all that still secured and operating too. So I'm pretty happy with that. That was the one thing that I was worried about when I ordered these seats, is I'm going to have seatbelt issues and airbag issues and all that stuff. But surprisingly enough, I did not have that issue. Yeah, you can kind of see my mess of wiring. I got to come down here with zip ties, clean all that up a little bit. The one thing with the JK Sport, I'm not sure about other models, but as far as the seat goes, driver's seat actually has a position sensor, which is all the way in the back. I'll try to point to that. All the way. Back here. And I was able to utilize the factory bolt locations. Back there you can kind of see there's a stud there, another stud there. It just fit right over that, so that made that install super easy. So coming over to the passenger side, that was a bit more of a challenge. And the reason being because the way that this is set up, you've got basically an occupancy sensor, and on the factory seats sits, somewhere around here. It's basically a load sensor that senses any weight over a certain limit that's on the seat, what that does is it gauges that there's somebody there, and it tells the airbag to operate. Now granted, the airbag is still going to go off in the event of a collision, whether or not there's somebody sitting here or not, but it's a little bit more of a safety factor. So one of the other things that I was a little bit concerned with getting everything fully functioning in here and still maintaining the factory safety equipment is actually this seatbelt restraint right there. So I don't know how easy that is for you guys to see. It is a little bit cramped in here. What I had to do with this, similar to the driver's side, I actually had to make a bracket to sit this seatbelt on there. What I ended up doing is bolting through this piston assembly right here, going off the factory bolt, and then just drilling 2 holes instead of 1 hole like I did over here on the driver's side, and bolted that directly onto that plate, or that mounting bracket. So that was the challenging part, trying to figure out all that geometry, get that seatbelt sitting in a halfway decent spot. Yeah, that's pretty much that. I mean, it took I don't know, it took a good 3-4 hours just messing around and trying to get everything lined up and get all the sensors in the right spot. But the biggest thing that I'm glad that I got working was actually this occupant sensor. So I can show you on the original seat where that actually sat. So that's the driver's seat. This is the passenger seat right here. So there's a plastic plate right here that kind of holds all the sensors up there. All the wires are all clipped into those plastic holes right there. Most difficult part really of removing everything down here was getting this sensor out safely. It took probably a good half hour just to be able to maneuver all those wires through these holes here, because the sensor actually runs through here, kind of snakes up inside of the foam, folds up over here just the excess wire, and then there's a sensor right about here and right about there. So I had to very carefully reach in there and just wiggle out that sensor as slowly and carefully as possible. It is a real thin, flat ribbon wire, so they're not the strongest of wires. But going back to the passenger side here, what I did to put it inside of the PRP seat is I actually went and get some light under here. Yeah, I'm in my garage. I don't have the best lighting in here, so bear with me. A little bit. There's a small cutout right here. That's for the submarine belt, for a 5-point harness. I'm not going to run a 5-point. I will be getting a 4-point harness here soon. That was one of the reasons why I bought these seats. I've also got a harness bar back there. So there's a small cutout right there for the submarine belt. That comes through right there. So I'm not going to use that. What I did is I was able to stuff that sensor almost identically to the way that it sat on the factory passenger seat inside of that foam. So as you can see, I'm pushing down on the top of the seat. Those sensors are picking up a signal saying that there's somebody there. Now, all this stuff is safety stuff. So I did it the way that I chose to, knowing that I'm responsible for anybody that's in here. So all I'm saying with this is use your discretion. It is possible to do, but just be cautious with it. Know that, you know, in the event of a collision or something like that, that there is the potential for something to not work correctly. So be cautious with it, but I know that there's not a lot of videos on doing this at all.